wherever they are, to talk to them about their issues, to see how we can help. We understand that this is a very difficult thing, it's a difficult job, so we have to help each other, we have to complement each other. So my message to the Gambian taxpayers is this: we will provide all the necessary facilities, all the necessary services to, facilitate your compliance. But in return, we would expect you to do your utmost best to make sure that you pay your taxes on time. You make sure that, all other obligations that have to do with the payment of taxes are respected. Keep proper records. Keeping of proper records is very important. We are appealing to all taxpayers to make sure that, we start developing the culture of keeping records. We have a very poor culture of keeping records in this country. And that is, a serious constraint in terms of really administering, taxes in this country. I know we have a part to play, a role to play in this by, helping them, and, work on capacity problems that they have, particularly for the smaller ones. So we'll do whatever we can in our own way. But I am appealing to all taxpayers that please, develop this culture of voluntary tax compliance. You know that the obligation will always be there for you. Whether you pay it now or later, sooner or later we will come to find out, and you will not only pay what you were supposed to pay ideally if you had paid on time. You will pay penalties, you will pay interest. The other thing is, we are not going to take it lightly. If we had done all the necessary things to facilitate your compliance and you fail to come forward, definitely the full force of the law will now be applied.
Tax is based on self-assessment. What is self-assessment?
The way our tax system is operating, it's like the onus is on the taxpayers. Malik, if you are in a taxable activity, we are expecting you, for instance, if you have an income tax return to file, we are expecting you at the end of every quarter to prepare your returns and come and pay your tax. And the deadline is also the 15th day of the month following the end of the quarter. Like the first quarter ends in March, by the 15th of April, you will be required to file a return. So self-assessment is just you preparing a return reflecting all your activities and showing what your liability is for the period, and you come and settle it with us.
I'm sure you'll be giving out certain forms. Will that be in place? What kind of forms will you be giving to this business?
The returns, basically, because that is what will enable them to do these assessments that we are talking about. So we'll do our utmost best to make sure that they are always available, to make sure that, they provide us with the necessary information.
What information will be supplied? What do we expect to be on the tax return forms?
Well, basically, just generally to summarize this, it would contain all the necessary information that would enable us to establish the liability of the taxpayer, including the name of the taxpayer, the location of the taxpayer, the TIN number of the taxpayer, what he has realized in terms of, income during the period. All the information that would enable us arrive at the correct liability of the taxpayer. That is what it does. The return is just a replica of what you have, this immigration form. If you are going to apply for a passport, the form is done in such a way that it provides all the information to enable the immigration authorities to be able to see whether you are eligible for a passport or not. A return also does exactly that, just to establish the liability of the taxpayer.
Now, I'm sure we have a category of rates. I mean, there are some who will be exempted from paying VAT. Can we look at that?
Yes, for VAT, basically there are two rates. The standard rate, which has to do with all goods and services that are sold, within the country, and goods that are imported. For them, they attract a rate of 15%.
Both of them?
Both of them, when goods are imported into the... But the good thing is that the sales tax that the VAT is going to replace also has 15% on imports. So the VAT also has 15%. So for goods and services that are sold within the country, the VAT rate is 15%. And for sales tax also, the same rate was being applied. So this is just to say that, all these are benefits that should not make anybody increase prices here unnecessarily, because we have not seen a radical change that would have a big effect in terms of, putting upward pressure, on prices. So...
Yeah, go ahead.
Exactly. So basically, you realize that, these are things that are very important, and, we should... take note of.
In fact, Shah, you just struck the chord there, because I was going to ask you, will this in any way increase prices?
we do not expect prices to increase. In fact, we expect a stabilization of prices. Stabilization in the sense that, looking at, our transition from sales tax to VAT, much of what has been happening in terms of impacting on prices has been addressed. The rate issue has been addressed. We are using the same rate. If we had used a higher rate, of course, we would expect, a bigger impact. The refund input tax credit mechanism, the refund system we have talked about, that is a refund that is available to all registered taxpayers. So these are benefits that definitely should, lead to, a reduction in prices. Telecommunications, for example, currently we are charging a rate of 20%, and come VAT, we would have a rate of 15%. We have a whole lot of exemptions in terms of, things in terms of goods and services like medical, educational services, domestic passenger transport, the Banjul Serekunda, those kind of things, because we don't want price hikes, fare hikes in this country. So, it's a whole lot of them that are very, very basic, the basic essential commodities that we consume on a basic daily basis, they are exempted. All that is to make sure that we do not create an inflationary situation in this country, speaking in general terms. So we do not expect that problem. And going just back to the rate business, I talked about the 15% to deal with goods that are sold within the local economy and imported. There is also a zero rate. Zero rate applies to goods that are exported out of the country. So that's how the VAT is designed, because VAT is meant to tax consumption that is taking place in the Gambia. So because exports are meant for another market outside the Gambia, they would be consumed outside the Gambia. Therefore, that's why we are applying a zero rate.
Let me bring you to GRTS. I run a service. At the same time, I make some money, but a bulk of my service is social service. Now, how am I going to be seen in this VAT thing?
Yes, Malik,
I don't know what
I just want to say, you are applying what they locally call Kuracha Taisakanam. Huh?
Yes, absolutely.
So basically that's the direction, this interview is now going. But fine, Malik, the thing about VAT is not discriminatory. It does not look at GRTS or it's just looking at anybody that meets the criteria for registration, you have to be registered. Malik, if the services that you are providing and selling in GRTS, if they are if the turnover is up to 1 million, whether you provide social services or not, you will be required to register. That's the answer. Because social services is one thing, but you are also providing other things for which you are charging. And you can't tell me that for 12 months you cannot make $1 million. So that just should tell you that you should. But for the social services, anything that you do, VAT is based on consideration. That is, when you offer a service or a good, there is a price that has to be paid. So if you offer the service and you do not, the charges were gratis, then you don't pay, because it means that what was charged is just zero. 15 times 0 is 0. So it means that the implication of the VAT would hit you on those services that you are selling and you are charging money.
All right, this is going to be a very cumbersome exercise come 2013 January 1st when you start to implement VAT. Does that mean that the GRA will expand its employer base? You will be looking for more staff.
Thank you, Malik.
Training as well. All those things will come into play.
Thank you, Malik. All those things are part of our program. In fact, if you have been checking the papers we have been advertising, just recently we finished recruitment for about 25 additional staff. VAT will require, additional manpower. And, we are already working on those kind of things. The capacity issues you have talked about, training, we are also working on them. So there are areas that are very critical as far as the success of the VAT is concerned. The manpower aspect you have talked about, the training that you have talked about. We are also working on our IT systems, enhancing the GAM tax state, which is the IT system that we are going to use for the administration of the VAT and all other taxes. So we are working on all those internal, arrangements, internal administrative aspects to make sure that we strengthen the capacity of the institution to be able to cope with the challenges that have to do with the introduction of the VAT.
You have 5 months to go before you start charging VAT. How is your sensitization like?
Well, we started in a modest way in the past months, but now we want to be very aggressive. We want to, use all kinds of, methods of